Hi, my name's Jen Ford, Principal Restoration Ecologist with Ecosure, here in Turrbal, Yagara country. This video is on monitoring and evaluation, monitoring our ecological restoration projects, essentially so we know when we've achieved our aims and that we can understand our trajectory. Are we getting towards achieving that main aim? Are objectives being achieved? There's lots of ways to do it, but most practitioners, the people that work on ground, tend to do it in a more informal way, such as photo monitoring, and of course the daily record sheets. There's also formal ways of carrying out monitoring as well, and that's usually done by the restoration ecologists, so those people that have practiced and learned about the science, simply because it's really time consuming, and in some cases you need certain licenses. Informal monitoring is a great way to share with as many people as we can the changes, the positive changes in our site. It's really good to have that before shot because I know so many times I've said to people, oh, this site used to look like this and it used to look like that and it took us 10 days just to do this area. But when you tell them that, no one believes you. So to have a photograph and something that can be really well replicated, perhaps you take the second photograph after you've finished the primary weed control, and maybe another photograph at the 6-month interval, and then perhaps every year. It's a really good way to illustrate the changes in a site and to go back to it in 5 years' time and go, wow, look what we've achieved. Look how we have reinstated and facilitated those natural processes again. So informal monitoring is about taking a really good before and after photo. There's actually some tricks to taking a good before and after photograph. And because all of us tend to have a camera on us nowadays, some of them are pretty good quality. But lining it up and getting the same depth and similar light conditions if possible, the same height above our photo monitoring point, it's all really key to illustrating that it was the same position. So for instance, you might have a particular tree in your photo monitoring point. Perhaps it's a really wonky branch that's going more horizontally across the area that you're taking the photograph of. It's good to have something in there apart from the photo monitoring point that tells people that it's the same area. And we're going to go a little bit more detail into that. Of course, the other way of doing informal monitoring is to do detailed daily record sheets. Daily record sheets are a really good way of informally monitoring your site. So yes, we can compile that information, like the hours worked, how many trees were planted, the area that was covered, how many times we actually had to go over that area doing follow-up and weed control maintenance in order to get natives re-establishing on site. So it provides some really good information for us to compile to assist with reporting and sharing that information. But nothing's better than really having a photograph to share, you know, the trajectory of that site and how things have really grown, recovered, have become more healthy. So when putting in your photo monitoring point, always good to use a steel picket, something that can handle the weather and that can't be easily removed. Remember, we want to continue to take these photo points from the same position with the same direction and the same depth each time. So I'm popping this one here because I can actually use this one as perhaps 3 different photo points. And a great thing with this one is we've got a lot of weed to control here, so there's going to be a clear distinction with the before and the afters. But the use of a little bit of slope is wonderful for that before and after as well. So we can really, you start to see the depth of the work that's been done. So having a little bit of slope in there is often good. And then lining up certain trees as well once I take the photograph. So these different Lophostomons here, perhaps the one down further that is got a 3-pronged stem, that'll be quite distinctive later on. I'm actually really strong, this is quite hard ground. Usually better as a one-person job too, to make sure that you look after your hands. So I've got that in far enough, shouldn't come out. I've got a good safety cap, which I'm going to pop on there because the last thing we need to do is lose any good people that are in the bush. It's not the straightest of entries, but it'll do for today. And then I'm going to mark it with a particular point. This little Sharpie. Now we have 2 other monitoring points in this particular site, so this is going to be number 3. What I want to do is actually get that number, and probably in the bottom of my photograph will be about this much, but that 3 will be in there, and that helps me line them up later on. It's amazing how much the bush changes once you've done your work, particularly that primary and follow-up weed control. So if you've got something in there that marks the point, it makes it a whole lot easier to find afterwards. And I'm going to take some this way as well. Often when I'm going back out to take the follow-up photographs, I'll even take my Sharpie with me to make sure I can go over that number. They usually fade. And I often take a GPS point as well, so sometimes things can change really rapidly in the bush through fire, floods, sometimes vandalism, and also the site really can change a lot. So taking a GPS point, marking it on my map and in my daily record sheet, photo point 3, really allows me to come back and easily take the next photograph. Taking my photos in all of my different directions, getting some features in there as well. Coming back to your site to take a photograph after a big event is also really good. So if a big fire or flood or something, big storm event, and your site's changed dramatically, it's a really good time to get back in and take another photograph, and then get that sense of how, again, the site is recovering and the kind of trajectory that goes with that. When conducting more formal monitoring, it's a whole lot more time consuming, really worth it to understand, are we reaching our aims? Are we on the correct trajectory to ecosystem health? But it does take a lot of time and it can be expensive. There are a couple of ways to do it. There is, say, transects that might go through and measure every single plant at each layer. It might be quadrats. These sorts of things are usually done by restoration ecologists simply because of the time it takes. It could be fauna monitoring. So again, special licensing might be involved there, where you do perhaps trapping or some camera traps to really get a sense of what fauna is utilising your site day and night. There's also the Society of Ecological Restoration has put together a recovery wheel. So again, based on the reference ecosystem, so a healthy system, we come in and it's according to, a bit like movies, the 5-star rating system. So 1 being a bit more poor and 5 being a lot healthier. And they're done according to 6 different attributes. It's good if you can be the same person doing that measurement each time. It's not monitoring the work done by people, but more monitoring how the site is developing its trajectory. So again, looking at structure, the diversity, connectivity, habitat, those sorts of things. Another type of monitoring is biocondition monitoring, or that's what we call it in Queensland. There's other types of condition monitoring. And again, it's scoring your site according to a range of attributes. So looking at what is a healthy site or your benchmark, and then comparing your site to that score. So for instance, again, we might measure things like all the diversity that's happening on the floor of your ecosystem, everything that's happening in the mid-story, everything that's happening in the canopy, even down to if there's woody debris, so different types of habitat that might be in your site. And all of that gets a score, and again, you know, determines, is it on the right trajectory, has it even reached remnant status?